In a world surrounded by franchises, reboots, and shared universes, an elite team of podcasters will risk body and soul to investigate the depths of intellectual properties, one multiverse, subgenre, and trend at a time. Who are we? We're the IP Squad. Welcome back to the IP Squad, finishing up our investigation into the Universal Soldier franchise. I'm John Campbell. Of course, my partner for this investigation has been Michael Lissman.
Hey, that's me.
That's Lissman. Boy, what a wild ride this has been. And that continues into this last one.
It maybe the wildest ride, I would say.
I mean, this
certainly the weirdest.
This is the boldest swing of the franchise, right?
Yes. I was telling Maggie, because Maggie watched this.
Okay, yeah.
With me. She's seen none of the other films, which kind of doesn't matter.
I know. I would almost. Yeah. I would almost. Yeah, I was thinking that watching this, I was like, you could kind of just watch this one.
Yes, because even Luke Devereaux's backstory doesn't really matter either. I didn't fully understand everything that happened in this film, so I'm hoping, John, that you.
I think I've seen this a couple times, so I think I can fill in some gaps, maybe. Although there is some stuff that is purposely obfuscated, obviously, because I think this one is much more. Yeah, this one is much more of a brain tease. No, maybe not brain tease, but mind, warpy kind of.
Yeah,
what is reality?
For almost like a Memento style.
I was thinking about Nolan while watching it for sure. Yeah,
unreliable narrator. You can't trust the perspective of the main character because you start out and you don't really know anything about. And I guess the first thing we should say is that Jean-Claude Van Damme is not the star of this film, which I think we've talked about a little bit.
We have, and that really, I will say, that's one of the biggest points of contention from some Unisol fans.
Which is fair. I love Jean-Claude Van Damme. Everyone who listens to this knows that you and I are huge fans.
JCVD is a huge icon to us. Yeah. But if they're going to hand it off to somebody else, we've got no problem with that person being Scott Adkins.
Absolutely, yes.
And he's great. He's great at this.
He is. Yeah. He does. He does best, which is everything. Yeah. So
I will say though, the poster also doesn't help. I don't know if you've seen the poster for this.
No, I have not seen the poster.
It is gigantic, whole upper half, Van Damme, Lundgren, then a little Scott Adkins.
He's backlit too.
Yeah,
so
you can barely even see it's him. Their name above title, then the title. He's below title. We should mention that I don't think we've actually said that this is Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning from 2012.
Right. Yes.
Which is the sixth, and as of the recording of this, final Universal Soldier film.
Yeah, which you and I have talked about. Maybe not another film, but maybe a mini series would be kind of interesting.
I did see there have been people who have been interested in continuing the property in some capacity. I do think I guess once more, but even the first movie, I would say just start over. Take the concept and start over. And I think a cool Netflix or Apple or Amazon series.
Right. Yeah.
That could allow you to explore some of the more sci-fi elements of this. This one, I would say more than sci-fi, leans into horror quite a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely got some horror vibes for sure. It's got, it's not quite psychological horror. It's got a flavor of it.
Yeah,
it is mostly an action film. But it does have that's the icing on the cake of the action film. Is the psychological horror.
Is this the best of them, Lesman?
I think so.
Because I feel like this is the only one that has like something to say, even if it's it's still like an action movie. But
do you
like,
think it's saying? You know what I mean? Like it, because it's like, as we said before, it's a little ambiguous with
I mean,
what
let me say it puts the themes that have been that have sort of been accidentally in these movies that they don't a little bit more front and center, which is the idea of soldiers as property, as like turning humans into weapons.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely
yes.
a big part of this movie.
Yes, yeah, because spoiler alert, Scott Adkins is secretly a Universal Soldier, and his memory of his wife and child are implants.
Yeah, that's the big thing because, oh, man, I gotta say it's so interesting. This is directed by the same guy who directed the last movie, Universal Soldier Regeneration.
God, so what happened? He must have just done a lot of reflecting and was like, that was bad though, right? That was pretty bad.
Well, we liked
no. The last one was okay. Sorry.
Yeah, Regeneration, not The Return.
I was thinking of the one.
Yeah, that's Universal Soldier: The Return.
Okay, that's the one. I totally forgot about the last film.
Regeneration, which was the one in the
and that one was
Chernobyl.
Also pretty good.
Pretty good, but I do feel like he came into that one. Somebody else was supposed to direct it, and he came into it. This is the first one that starts from, this is his script, he wrote this. So it does sort of feel like a conscious... I think that was a real transitional movie, Regeneration, because that's a much more serious movie. And I feel like that's sort of the like, okay, we can make a darker, more serious, more violent one of these that then segues fully into this one that is much more serious, much darker.
And this one actually... I would say the story actually has a story. I felt like the last one, like stuff kind of happened. And then for the last, like, I don't know, third or maybe half, somewhere in between there is just nonstop action, which actually kind of happens a little bit here too. But they've
done a much better job of seeding it. And also the action is part of the plot, as we come to understand, because of course, we'll be jumping all over the place as we often do, and of course, spoilers abound and stuff like that. So, but the whole idea that, Scott Adkins
DiCaprio dies at the end of Titanic,
even though there was room on that door, as everyone knows.
So much room.
Yeah.
Sorry. You said we were going to spoil some things.
Yeah. And that might include other movies, apparently. Yeah. Spoilers for just film. Bruce Willis was a ghost. No, what I was going to say is, including this whole idea that the action is part of the plot, and that they are trying to activate this guy to commit violence. So it doesn't just feel like, now it's time for SmackDown. It's like, oh, well, this has always been the goal of what they were trying to, boil. They have this guy on this simmering boil the whole movie, basically trying to have this guy, flip out, which he does. And when he does, because I got to say, too, this even takes the violence in the last movie to a whole other level.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
This is really, the violence in this movie is grim and gory.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it does start with, I got to say, the opening of this movie really it tells you this is a whole different game.
Yeah. I mean, I guess with the fact, because I was just like, oh, they're gonna kill the wife and child, like that cliche. But then that's also kind of the point, is that it isn't actually real. So
I mean, they're almost like they're using the cliche purposefully as a cliche about like, well, this is what normally motivates action heroes, so we create that. So it's actually, but the whole first person perspective of it, and then. Yeah, you definitely don't expect to see Jean-Claude Van Damme shoot like a 10-year-old in the face.
Not really. So I was just like, well, okay, so something's going on. Someone's framing, Luke Devereaux. Because what we've seen, I'm assuming the first movie is the only movie that counts as canon at this point.
No, the last one as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
Because it's the same director, and so this is is a sequel to Regeneration.
Okay. So,
which makes sense, because if you remember at the end of that movie, he abandoned his humanity to say, right? Because that's the thing, is he was trying to become more human in the last movie, and then took the super soldier serum again, or whatever. I'm sorry,
Right.
that Marvel would have sued the shit out of them if they had said that. But the universal soldier serum, the strength juice, or whatever it was that they called it.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like that sets up where Luke Devereaux is in this movie, having
makes sense.
chosen once again to become the weapon.
He's not working for the government because the government sent Scott Adkins after him.
So what happens in this movie is sometime in the interim between those movies, I actually really like this as the end of the Luke Devereaux story is like, finally his thing is just like, I'm embracing, I'm a universal soldier, but also you don't own me. I look at him in this movie as like the Magneto of universal soldiers, where he's like, you made us better than you, and you want to tell us what to do? No, we should be ruling you. Yes. And so he's, quote unquote, freeing other Unisouls and building this kind of religious cult almost.
Yes, yeah, it did feel that way.
That's where we find Luke Devereaux in this movie.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I was having trouble remembering all of the details of the last film. It's been a little bit since we saw it, so but yeah, that makes sense.
Right, is that he eventually, tiring of being the property of this thing, he is now expanded, but possibly. Well, it's an interesting thing because we don't. Luke Devereaux isn't the main character of this movie, so we don't really get a perspective of how good or bad he is.
No, not at all. It's almost not the point.
I say because his whole thing is just, I wanna, but it does seem like he is heading towards Universal Soldier superiority as opposed to so. But once again,
maybe he's just declaring war on the U.S. government for doing to him what they did,
because that's the thing I think that's really smart about this script. This is firmly the best written of the bunch, I think, in terms of
absolutely,
across the board. But this whole idea about when you realize at the end, you're like, oh, by only perceiving Devereaux through Scott Adkins' character, we don't really know what his deal is. So even you're like, oh, when he ultimately kills him at the end of the movie, you're like, is that good?
We don't know. We have no idea. That's because Scott Adkins chooses the delusion over recognizing that it's fake. And it is interesting because when he was like getting the drill in his head and everything, I'd be like, fuck that. I'd just be like, no, you gave them to me, they're mine, like, as in this imaginary family. And I guess, and they ended up doing that, so but like, it's just so strange
because if you sort of pull out to the whole idea is that there's to kind of, because I actually think it's not super complicated what's happening, but the way the movie's presenting it is
correct.
It's that thing I actually do really love about Chris Nolan movies is like, actually they're incredibly simple, but the way he's presenting the story to you makes it seem like, wow, wait a minute, okay, this is this and this. Anyway, the thing about the idea is that Devereaux has been sort of unlocking Universal Soldiers from government control and building his own, society of them in some capacity. And what their goals are, we're not entirely sure. But in order to stop that, the government has been sending other Universal Soldiers after him, but they keep losing those people.
Yeah.
And so they have created what they think is the best opportunity to do that, which is, we saw that this is carried over from the last movie, the idea that you can clone Universal Soldiers.
Right, yeah.
And so what the movie basically says at the end is they just keep sending different Scott Adkins after him.
He's like a Terminator.
Yeah, they just keep oh, that Scott Adkins didn't take him out. Let's give him this one. But they've given him a different, backstory every time. And so this time, their big final thing is, oh, we'll make it a personal vendetta, and that will be nothing will stop this guy if he thinks Devereaux killed his family.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so, that and ultimately, then of course what backfires on them is, while he does succeed in killing Devereaux, he does turn against the government, and then at the end of the movie is sort of presented that he has now become the Luke Devereaux and the Universal
Right,
soldiers are following
exactly.
him.
Yeah, because he's like, oh yeah, these government people are bad.
Right, because even after he kills Van Damme, he then still kills his government handler, and then you get the scene where all the Universal soldiers gather around him,
Right.
and it's like, oh, okay, so it still backfired on them. Basically, the whole point of these movies, right, is like, this is never gonna work.
It's never, yeah, exactly. Like all of these tinkering with people and playing God it's not good. It seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
I guess, to a fake government,
Yeah, I mean, yes, yeah. If you take morality out of the equation.
Sure, exactly.
Right.
But then, yeah, obviously it's more complicated than that. So
no, and I think this is the movie, like I said, I think what I really like about this one is this is the one that makes that as expressly clear, that that's what these films should have been about the whole time, is this idea that you can't stomp out the humanity of these people. Yeah. No matter what you fill them with or whatever, is that it's going to ultimately backfire on you.
Do you think Scott Adkins was a person originally, like an actual person?
I think so, only because we know all the other cloned Universal soldiers were clones of people, right? Like,
okay,
because this is another Lundgren clone in this.
Yes, yeah, they keep popping up.
Yeah, stop cloning Dolph Lundgren. And now he's running like a sex club for Universal soldiers.
Yeah, that was weird.
That's a very weird scene. This movie is, like you said, weird, which I'll take, though, because I think the other movies have been lacking a weirdness for how insane this plot is.
Yeah, they seem almost like clinical, like the old films. Like, it's just like, this is just the film. And we're going to explain to you what's happening in the film and what the plot of the film is.
And you're like, but are you're telling me that they're resurrecting the bodies of soldiers? Like, yeah, but watch them kick each other.
But they're gonna kick each other. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, why stop asking questions and just turn your brain off?
Because the first Universal soldier we meet from the government is returning the plumber. This is returning from the last movie, Andre the Pitbull Arlovsky.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
He does look very different in this film.
He does.
Because he didn't have a beard or
he's got
like
he's got a shaved head. I mean, totally shaved head and face in Regeneration. So and again, it might be because it's been a while since I've seen the last one, but like I fully forgot that he was also in this film. And I did not recognize him. So I gotta say that I also gotta commend them for continuing to give him very little dialogue. I don't know how but he's a great physical presence. He is here. He was in the last movie. He is, as we talked about in the last one, an incredibly revered MMA fighter. Yes. But the scene when he's mowing people down in that Universal Soldier sex club is brutal. But one of the things I really latched onto this time is I love the way all the people getting shot were acting. They were inhuman about it. It wasn't like, I've been shot. It was more just like, oh, because they're
right, exactly.
They're Universal soldiers, and so they're taking these incredible. Once again, the squibs in this movie are A+.
Yes, I love that they didn't see. I mean, I guess it was 2012, but like, I miss squibs in films.
No, all of it feels like there's very little CGI in this movie entirely. It's all very practically done, so all the violence hits really hard. Like you can really there's some great blood in this movie, just like and it never feels and in fact actually the original cut of this movie did get an NC-17 from the MPA.
That's not shocking.
Yeah.
God, I wonder what they cut.
Yeah, I know, because it does feel like where does this movie hold back in any moment?
Right, exactly.
And I said, you straight up see a kid get shot through the head, like.
Yeah.
I mean, Dolph's death in this is incredibly gory. I gotta say I
guess that was some of the CG for the knife in the head was a little silly, but
Yeah, but then it went to a practical when he was actually like sitting on it, and that looked good.
That did look good. Yeah.
All the stuff with the machete down the end was so nasty, and when Scott Adkins just puts his arm up and the blade goes into it, and it's just stopped by the bone of his arm.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh God. Yeah. Very uncomfortable.
Yeah. It was. I mean. This thing delivered. I gotta say, I looked up John Hyams, who's the director and co-writer of this movie. I looked him up because I'm like, what else has this guy directed? He
Mm.
directed one other movie with Van Damme that I haven't seen that I now really want to, which is called
Mm.
Dragon Eyes, a movie they
Mm.
made between these two Universal soldiers.
Oh, cool.
That's about. I think it's one of our favorite subgenres, the underground fighting ring movie.
Classic.
Yeah, we love an underground fighting movie. But it's like
that's
a
classic Van Damme. Honestly, that's just blood
well,
sport.
it's one of the it's one of the best setups, because I think one of the things, us both being fans of martial arts movies, it can sometimes be hard to contextualize why people are doing martial arts, like in modern day. Because it is sort of like, why aren't they using guns? And so things like fighting competitions are like, well, yeah, of course, that's a good reason to have like 8 big fights in a movie.
Yeah. Yes. And have them not be Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Also, it looks like Peter Weller plays the bad guy in that movie, and he's wearing a top hat, or wearing a fedora and smoking a big cigar. And I need to see this. Because it seems like he's having a blast. So anyway, that's a different movie. That's Dragon Eyes. But I was just going to say is actually he directs a lot of TV. But I got to say, having watched this is, by the way, do you know the budget on this thing?
It's probably pretty small.
Yeah.
Is it bigger than the last film?
That's a good question, because the last one was
pretty small.
Was fairly small as well. It's
like
a little
15?
bit. It's a little. Last one was 10. This one is
10.
8.
Okay.
This one's a little cheaper than the last one.
It's a little cheaper. Oh, interesting.
But I think this one looks better. Now, some of that is, I think, also the movie has just been scaled down a bit. It's much more urban. It doesn't have some of the, it's not doing the Chernobyl stuff that the last one was. But I'm just saying, like, watching this and how well he directs the action of this movie, makes me go, I would love to see what this guy would do with $50 million.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
He works a lot. Like I said, he directs a lot of television, but I would just love to see like a Netflix or something give this guy a bigger budget to make an action movie with. Because I got to say, I think he has a great eye for action.
I mean, he should like work with the John Wick team.
Yeah,
I feel like you know what I mean. They feel very.
I'm trying to remember the name of that. Company.
Yeah, I can't remember
that the John Wick guys formed. That they've been making a bunch of great stuff like Bullet Train and The Fall Guy and Violent Night, and I think he'd be great at that.
Right,
because
exactly.
like I said, that's very little resources to make a movie like this for like $8 to $10 million, and I mean some of the action in this is better than movies that cost 5-6 times as much.
I mean, they really flipped that car. There's a whole car chase.
We were impressed by the
gunfight.
We were impressed by the car chase in the last one, actually, that opened the movie. I think this one's even better. And then
way better.
That also turns into the super fun sporting goods store fight.
That is maybe the best scene in the movie.
I think
maybe
it's pretty great.
It's really good.
It's got that Jackie Chan thing that we both love, where it's like, put him in a sporting goods store and think about what you can do. There's that great moment where Adkins catches the bat and then spins it back around. It's like that's what he's good at.
That's the moment where a flip kind of switches for him, because like all of the fight scenes up to that point, he feels a little out of his league, a little out of his depth. You know what I mean? Like he just is this innocent dad or whatever. But like getting hit in that fight scene, it does. Like you see like I said, a switch flip, and then all of a sudden he's way more brutal. He does a backflip kick, like
I think that's a really smart thing that like is one of those things that I can't believe it took him 6 movies to figure out. Is like, because the first movie started with 2 guys who just wake up as Universal soldiers, but they are Universal soldiers. The idea of a guy who doesn't know he's a Unisol instantly as an audience puts us more in his shoes, because he seems like a normal guy who's discovering this.
Yes.
And absolutely. I think that really makes this character, whose I think name is just John or something like that.
John, I don't even know if he has the last name.
He doesn't. And I think that's key to the idea about like
he's just a man.
We don't even know who the original version of this guy was. He has just become a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
How much did this feel like a Metal Gear Solid game to
Oh
you?
yeah,
Maggie and I were
absolutely.
talking about like this just feels like Metal Gear Solid, like all of the weird psychological shit.
Well,
Super Soldier Serum,
it's
like all
got
that
it's got a
bullshit.
lot of the stuff I respond to in like I'm a big fan of the like 60s 70s Cold War paranoia thriller, stuff like
Yeah.
Manchurian
Yes.
Candidate and stuff like that. And it's got a
Yes.
lot of that, which is also in Metal Gear Solid as well. This sort of idea about
Hmm.
like your mind is not your own, you're a tool of a government.
Hmm.
Because of course
Yeah.
then that eventually comes into stuff like the Winter Soldier over at
Right.
Marvel and things like that. I've always loved that idea about like, and especially I love a movie like this that has, you know, the confidence to just throw you into that and go
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
people are going to be confused, and that's
Yes. Yeah.
okay.
I was confused for a
Yeah.
while, but that's great. Maggie was even saying it's like it's engaging. It keeps you engaged because you don't fully know. It's not spoon feeding you all the information, so you have to pay attention to figure out
And
what's
it's
going
something
on,
I've heard,
which is
not
nice.
specifically this director, but I've heard a lot of directors talk about battling with studios on going like, hey,
Yeah.
first 20 minutes, people don't know what's happening. We got to fix that. That's
Yeah.
bad. People are going to leave.
No.
It's
No.
like,
No. No. No.
actually, I think it makes people lean in on stuff a lot of the time.
Yeah.
If it's done
Yeah.
well, like this is, I mean, it's all captivating.
Like
The other,
if the director trusts the audience to like go on a ride with them and just trust that like it's going to be fun whether or not it makes sense at first, like
yeah,
yeah, it's a sign of a very confident director in my opinion.
I think
uh,
that's it exactly, and that to me that's something I love feeling in movies, in TV, in comic books, and things like that. Is I
yeah.
love a sort of like I don't know what's happening, not in a way about like There's a difference between I don't know what's happening and when I can tell that the creator doesn't know what's happening.
Yes.
Because we've definitely seen
Yes.
stuff like that where it's like I don't think you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
This is not
Well,
on
that's the
me.
fear, right?
Right.
That's the fear of going into going into a movie or a show that has this kind of tone or whatever, or not tone, but like way of storytelling is like,
Right.
I hope this goes somewhere that makes sense.
Well, and
You
we've
know,
we've seen that with the countless, Nolan ripoffs or Tarantino ripoffs of people
yeah,
who understand the aesthetics of what those guys are doing, but don't actually have the storytelling craft to be able to pull that off. And so it's just like,
right,
oh, jumble it
exactly.
up, got it. You're like, well, that's not you can't just do that.
Yeah, there's like scenes are put in a specific order for a specific emotional reaction from the audience.
Right.
It's not just random. You don't just shuffle the
It's a thing
scenes.
you mentioned Memento earlier, and it's a thing I've talked to several people about that if you were to put that in the correct order, it would actually be a bad movie.
It'd be boring. It'd be
It
very
has to
boring.
be told backwards. It's not a
Yeah.
gimmick. It's 100%.
Yeah.
The story is still designed like a movie and has its
Yeah.
reveals and its act breaks. It's just
Right.
that it's going
Exactly.
backwards in time.
Yeah.
So I think I gotta say, but I will say there's a lot of fans of this franchise that were not thrilled with this movie.
I mean, it is very different.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the risk of doing something bold, is that not everyone's going to like it, but I think making something that is interesting over I think that's better than making something that you think
Well,
everyone will like.
I mean, I think the key difference here is you and I have not enjoyed a lot of these movies. So the idea of
No.
people, if I guess that there were people who were going, I was really liking where this franchise was headed, and I think the last movie, Regeneration, served enough, like it gave enough of what the base level appeal of this franchise was.
Yes. Yes.
But took it a little bit more serious, had a little bit more craft, and then I think this one
Mhm.
pushed it even more towards science fiction, psychological horror, conspiracy thriller kind of stuff. And I think that made people go like, hey, there's long stretches of this movie where nobody's kicking anyone. And I go to Universal Soldier movies. This is also, I believe, the longest entry in the franchise.
Yeah, it's pretty long. It's almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's pretty close.
But it earns its runtime, I think. I don't feel like
I was never bored.
it
I was
never
definitely never
dragged.
bored.
No.
Yeah.
Even the strat. I mean, that we know that if you're making a VOD or straight to video action movie, and you can have an almost 2 hour runtime, and I'm not feeling it's dragging between fight scenes, that's almost unheard of.
Yeah. Yes, yes, it is.
I wasn't. I've
Unfortunately,
never. I've seen this. I said I've watched it a few times, and I never. From the first time I saw it, I was never like, oh, man, when are you gonna fight somebody?
right? Yeah,
It never
yeah,
feels like that.
and there are pretty long stretches without
Yeah.
action. Although I will say I think this movie spreads the action throughout the entire film better than the last one. It did
Yes.
feel like there's like the opening car chase, and then all of the story, and then just all of the action. You know, it's almost like a action sandwich a little bit. But yeah, it's like it ramps up really, really well in this film,
It's almost it's this weird like mind-bending detective movie at a certain point, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like,
yes,
Scott Adkins has this memory of being, a suburban family man, which is always funny when one of these guys is supposed to just be like, yeah, I'm just a regular guy, it's just me, it's like this way I always bring up. It's one of the funniest things about Jingle All the Way is that Arnold's just like, I just sell mattresses in the suburbs. The fact that I'm gigantic and Australian is unimportant,
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't everybody? He could do it, but it's the weirdest thing about that movie to me is nobody's just like, hey, Rita Wilson, how did you meet this commando? Like, I don't.
Yeah, like where did this fucking statue come from?
Like, you just can't. You can't imagine Arnold's at the PTA meeting. You would just be. He could be there, but you would just be like, I'm not used to seeing a slab of meat who then opens his mouth and sounds like this. Is what put down the cookies. All right.
Those are my cookies.
It's such a weird movie. But the thing about that though, but then he's being told, they're like, no. What do you mean? You're this guy actually. You're a truck driver, and you're in with sort of shady / nefarious sort of people. I love the weirdness of when he goes to the trucking company, and the weird guy that runs the trucking company and his barking dog. I said, there's a lot of. So much thought has been put into atmosphere in this movie.
Yeah. Everything's just a little off kilter.
Yeah,
everything's just a little strange.
But it's like, there are details that we're used to. Like, you watch the ones with Battaglia, and like that doesn't feel like there's anyone that lives in this world. Here, you go to that trucking company, and like I said, the way the guy looks and the dog, and you're going like, ooh, there's like an environment here. There are characters that are.
Also history between characters.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It feels like the story, the world is still living outside of the narrative of the movie. It's like, it's always that sad thing when we were doing Action Shelf. This was the case too, where you start complimenting a movie for like basic things in a movie. But it is like, no, that's pretty rare in these actually.
I know. It's so sad.
I don't know that the woman he meets, that I particularly have much investment in that relationship. I don't think it's bad per se.
I'm glad it's not a romantic relationship.
No, she was in a romantic relationship with the previous clone of him.
Yeah.
Who, I gotta say, one of the biggest, coolest moments in this movie is when that door opens and it's another Scott Adkins.
Yes, because like up till that point, you're thinking it's maybe like a Moon Knight scenario, or like you said, like a Manchurian Candidate, where like, or even there's this other life
oft referenced and talking about Arnold, Total Recall, right? Where it's your memories are fake.
Yeah,
which is the case. This movie, what I love is this movie is like, no, his memories are fake and he's a clone.
Yes, they doubled up.
One the thing I love about that is that's not a Universal Soldier thing too. So when you see the second Scott Adkins, you're like, wait, what? Because that's not. Yeah. It's not like there's been multiple Van Dammes running around, and you know how much he loves to play dual roles.
It's true. A lot.
He really,
like a shocking amount.
He really, really does. Yeah. That's a great reveal. And it's just such an insane idea. They're just like, well, that Scott Adkins didn't kill Van Damme, so print us another Scott Adkins.
Hopefully this one will do it.
Yeah. But this guy, you can tell this guy's a little unhinged. When I think Adkins is really good at playing both of the parts without anything too crazy to separate them. They have a different energy, I think
they're still
something we really like about Adkins in this movie. Benefits from it is Adkins can act.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I love JCVD, and JCVD can act more than people, but there's a pocket. It's an even smaller pocket for Dolph Lundgren.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it is like Adkins is like, right. This is a guy who treated acting and martial arts both as
Equally.
skills
Yeah.
to learn and master.
Yeah.
Which is not often the case with these martial arts stars.
Yeah, I don't think they would have been able to get away with like this earlier on in the franchise.
No, I just don't think there was anybody who could have pulled it off.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't think any of the directors they were hiring would have the confidence to do it. And then two, I don't know anyone who could have put like Van Damme doing this same plot. It's not that he couldn't have done it, but it would have.
Battaglia.
Are you telling me my wife was a fake memory in my mind?
No, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
You're me.
But I don't understand. Why are there? Oh, could you imagine how boring two Battaglias talking to each other would be? Good God. We had enough trouble with one.
That would be the death of cinema, like the true death of
that's
cinema.
It, where it's like, I think we're done, folks. This medium's over.
No, all cameras are instantly broken forever.
It turns into the 30 Rock. Shut it down. Flip the lights off. We're done.
Yeah,
it's over. I bring up the female protagonist ish of the movie only because I'm just being reminded of her because she makes such little impression. It's not her fault. Maria Bonner is the actress.
She doesn't have anything to work off. Like the whole scene revealing the second John,
played by Scott Adkins.
Thank you. Jesus, my brain is broken.
Yeah. You watch enough of these movies that knows that.
That is true. Permanent brain damage.
Yep.
But you'd think she'd have more of a reaction to realizing, oh, this is the person I have a relationship with.
Right.
You know what I mean? She eventually does, but like for his whole monologue, she's just standing there staring at him silently. And she's giving me no reaction. Because
she's not really a character, right? She is another clue in his investigation to what's going on.
Yeah.
Because I also like that part too, where he gets the call from his friend, and then he goes over to see him, and the guy's been beaten to death, and that's where he finds the matchbook with the strip club that he finds the girl in, but then the reveal of the security camera showing him beating the guy to death.
Right, you're right. Yeah, exactly.
All that kind of stuff. Just the way the movie keeps throwing stuff at you to go like, oh, it's even more off kilter. It's even weirder than you think. What is going on?
Yeah. Yes.
And then we're also occasionally cutting to Dolph Lundgren in like a weird guerrilla military outfit.
It's not clear where this is. It's some sort of underground bunker.
Yeah, it's wherever Devereaux's people are, and it's interesting to find Luke Scott, or at least this clone of Luke Scott, which is Dolph Lundgren's character.
Wait, both of their names are Luke?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say Luke? Sorry, I didn't. That was my mistake. It's not Luke.
Andrew Scott? No.
Andrew Scott is right. Andrew Scott. Sorry.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is Andrew Scott. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Andrew Scott is now going like, you will meet him, you will serve. Like all of a sudden, his former greatest enemy is now, he's like lieutenant in his cult.
Yeah, and I want to know like what led those two to like, is he just being mind controlled like the rest of them, or?
Well, he's not being mind controlled. Isn't that the idea that they're not being mind controlled? That they get injected, because the whole thing is, because that's what happens with the plumber. When they send the plumber guy after the other Universal Soldiers, they inject him, and instead of the Universal Soldier programming, they see Luke Devereaux, who is basically offering them,
like
freedom,
salvation.
whatever, yeah. Like I said, he's become this like religious figure, and I do like very Heart of Darkness Apocalypse Now.
Absolutely,
especially down the stretch when we finally get to him and he's in the two-toned black and white makeup.
Very strange.
Very strange.
I also liked that as well.
I did too.
I don't know why he was doing that,
No,
but
it's like I said,
it
but
was
it's
weird and it was visually striking.
the.
So,
I mean, yeah, I got it. Yeah, absolutely. But it also has a lot of aspects of Brando and Apocalypse Now, and this
yes.
whole idea
Yeah.
about like we are going up the river to find the mad colonel. You know,
Mm.
uh,
Wonder if that was an intentional,
it had to be. I can only imagine,
right?
especially
Yeah.
like the shaved head decision. I think is definitely a call out to Colonel Kurtz
Yeah.
from Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Which I also know is a book, Heart of Darkness, but I am who I am, so it's Apocalypse
But
Now.
we're talking about the
The
visual
visuals of
language
it
of
are
the film.
very similar to the way Brando is
Right.
portrayed in that movie.
Exactly.
And and I gotta say, reading some of the trivia about this and stuff like that, Van Damme was a little shaky to take this movie on.
That's fair.
He was
He's barely in it.
Yeah, he was apparently a little like I don't know about this, and he really didn't like the idea that he was going to get killed by Scott Adkins, and
Yeah.
but they John Himes was able to talk him into it, saying that he ultimately was able to convince him by doing, saying this is sort of a passing of the torch to the new generation of action hero.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that they've worked together a few times
since then.
Yeah,
So,
Adkins and Van Damme. I mean, our beloved Assassination Games.
Oh, great movie.
Great stuff, man. And I gotta say, it's interesting that they talk about that the final fight between them was supposed to be much more involved, but Adkins had hurt his knee. I didn't feel that I didn't feel that it was holding that back. I still thought the final fight between them was pretty great.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's.
I think the one with the pit bull was the most visceral, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
But there was a lot to.
I think
there's a lot going on visually with the fight again.
I think
like
all
especially
three of them.
how Van Damme looked as well. You know what I mean? And how he was slowly deteriorating as he was getting the shit beaten out of him.
Absolutely. I mean that fight is so, like I said, and I think the Lundgren fight is great too. And similarly, just punishing how bloody they get in it. It's something I really, I that's something that oftentimes. It's not like I am have some weird like blood fetish or something like that as much as, but it just, I think I respond to the stuff where it's like, if people are getting hit, they're getting beaten, they're getting bloody. Yeah. It makes it more visceral. You're feeling the exertion of a fight. PG-13 movies where people
it kind of takes me out of a film if somebody gets hit with, say, like, I don't know, a crowbar over the head, and there's no mark. They're not acting like they just got hit over the head. You know what I mean?
No, it's like, I feel the same way about gunshots too. It's like, exactly. You're telling me that guy got shot, but if I'm not, it doesn't have to be the goriest of gory things, but like, man, when bloodless action is really tough for me to get involved with. Yeah, because it does sort of feel like, well, what's happening? I mean, this movie obviously takes things to an 11, but
all sorts of digits get cut off in this film.
They did talk about that Van Damme was overwhelmed by the way Adkins works because it's so much faster, because Adkins came from Hong Kong cinema, and they talk about he had to slow his process way down for Van Damme.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Because we know over there they are machine gunning those movies. That choreography is lightning fast.
Yeah.
And Van Damme at this point, of course, has spent most of his career, actually all of his career. I don't think he ever did anything that wasn't a Hollywood produced movie.
Mm-hmm.
So when Van Damme's coming, or when Adkins is coming at him with like, all right, we need to learn these 40 moves right now, and we're gonna do it in a oneer. Van Damme's like, whoa.
Give me some time, please.
Yeah, good Lord. Not only am I not used to that, I'm a gentleman of a certain age. I mean, he looks great as always, as he still looks great. It's not like, but I do imagine that would be a lot. Also, I did see somewhere in here, I don't know what he would have been. Maybe he would have been the plumber. I don't know. But at some point, Michael Jai White was supposed to be in this movie. But was unable to do it, which would have made this just even a little bit better.
Oh, that would have been amazing. He needed a comeback, because he was
Yeah.
done so dirty by the film he was
Oh
in.
man, Universal Soldier: The Return is still
Yeah.
maybe the biggest missed opportunity. Where you're like, okay, we got Van Damme back, and we're putting Michael Jai White with him. Well, that should be an amazing movie. Instead,
Oops.
no.
No.
And those guys work together a lot, Adkins and Michael Jai White, obviously,
Oh yeah.
because they're part of that same. If there's the Lundgren Van Damme, then the next generation of action guys are those guys.
Yeah.
So this is a really, like I said, like you were saying, Maggie watches without having seen the other ones. I do almost go like, maybe just watch this one. If there's one
It
thing
might
to
be
take from,
better if you don't see any of the other ones,
yeah,
because you don't have the baggage about, who Luke Devereaux was. I'm wondering if that's kind of part of like people being mad at, is like, well, they just killed him off like almost unceremoniously,
yeah.
without knowing anything about what he's been up to. And he's like the protagonist of these films.
If you are really viewing this as the Luke Devereaux saga, like,
Mhm.
yeah, then I do get that reaction. I think the thing is, I've been underwhelmed by almost every one of these movies.
It's true.
So
Yeah.
I don't really
Yeah.
have it. I love Van Damme, but I have no attachment to the character of Luke Devereaux.
No.
I think that's actually something we've often complained about in these movies, is they have never given him enough to play.
No, not at
And
all.
Adkins gets all of that in this movie.
Yeah.
So I think,
Like,
yeah,
I don't. If you asked me, gun to my head,
yeah.
to explain the personality of Luke Devereaux, I don't know if I could.
Well, and some of that, I mean, a lot of that is on the scripts, right? Is that from movie to
Yes.
movie, the fact that they can't really get a grasp on what these movies are about or any kind of consistent
Absolutely.
continuity. I mean, as we wrap
Yeah.
this up, with this being the last one, it is sort of like looking back on these, this is one of the messiest franchises I can think of.
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
all over the place, character-wise, story-wise, continuity-wise. They just
Yeah.
this is a franchise that, like, there's a kernel of an idea, but it does feel like every time they went out with an entry, they were like, no. Now we figured, okay, now we know what this movie should be. And they're like, that
And they
didn't
never
work.
got it.
Oh
Yeah, it
shit.
just
No.
kept
Yeah.
not working.
Yeah, I think
It is interesting how a franchise can keep failing and still there's still more. I mean, I guess it depends on how you consider failing. I don't know how successful some of the earlier films were, but
well,
yeah.
particularly the first one. It really is just a thing of that first one was very, very successful.
Okay.
And I think also came out in a time particularly, that's why I really am surprised, or I would be surprised. I know people are working on it, so maybe it will happen, but I would be surprised if we didn't see some sort of Universal Soldier reboot, because right now 90s nostalgia is through the roof, of course. And so the idea of doing something with this, because even just that people know it as a thing, even if they don't know what it is, they're like, oh yeah, there were movies called Universal Soldier. And I think people throw them in the same, like, yeah, like Terminator, RoboCop, Universal Soldier,
Yes. Yeah.
I still want Time Cop. I still really want to write a Time Cop reboot. That's my
Absolutely.
because I still think that's a prime example of a great setup that the movie does not take remotely enough advantage of. As much as I enjoy that movie, I am like,
Sure.
he's a time cop. The plots for this thing could be limitless, and instead it kind of ends up just being like every other 90s thriller.
Right.
Which is
Exactly.
fun, but I'm just going like, why am I not getting, Van Damme in medieval times? Why am I not getting,
Right.
He should be jumping all over the place.
Follow through with the premise, like play with the idea. Please.
First, and I know now this is turning into a Time Cop podcast, but I've always talked about the opening scene of that movie is the best part of the movie, which is just, it's the Old West. There's a there's a wagon full of gold. Guys pull up to rob it, and then they bust out machine guns and mow everybody down because they're time travelers. And I'm like, there's your movie. Why isn't the whole movie like that? Like, that's such a cool idea. It's just like, oh, people are bringing modern technology and committing crimes in the past and stuff. Anyway, let's talk about this. Didn't come out in theaters, obviously, so I can't tell you about any box office on it. I think there was enough like push and pull that made this kind of not as successful, because obviously they haven't made another one. I will say it does seem like this was maybe the best critical reaction to one of these.
That makes sense.
That's still only a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, but
yeah,
but that's big for one of these. That's pretty good. That there's even more than half of critics are going, hey, there does seem to be
here.
That's what a lot of the reviews are like. Is like, wow, okay, I think this is kind of a movie.
It kind of makes me wish there were more.
I know it does feel like I wish this had been
solidified this premise.
If this had really been the like clear delineation starting point, and there were like 3 more movies with Adkins,
like fighting the government, fighting the original Unisol program.
Because that's the thing is,
that'd be great.
While it's a culmination of the other movies, it does feel like the clean break movie that could have been the first in a new franchise. Yep. And I think that may have been the idea. But like I said, I think
it didn't, though.
There's enough people who were just, and I will say, I do put some of that on the marketing for being like, it's Van Damme, it's Lundgren, action fans get ready. I can understand it if you rented something with this cover, and then you're like, wait, what?
A lot of Van Damme.
And at this point, not a lot. Adkins is on the ascent, but now he's as much an icon in that world. So I think at the time, too, it's like he hadn't done a lot of the stuff that would make him become really endeared to action movie fans. He had, actually, they had done Assassination Games before this.
Okay.
I thought that was after this, but it's actually before that. And he had done the first Ninja, which we did watch.
Right. Okay. That's right.
I think the second Ninja is better. Ninja Shadow of a Tear.
We only saw the first one, though.
We only covered the first one, but the second one is I think widely considered better. Anyway,
does that also have Scott Adkins in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And I forgot he did Hard Target too, which I've never seen.
Weird. That's strange.
So he eventually took on another Van Damme property. Franchise. Yeah. That one I think probably less because there's only just the one movie.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about
less of a messy fiction than what's going on here.
Right. Yeah. I think it's Hard Target 2 is one of those where it's like now they're hunting Scott Adkins. It's not it's not.
Right.
It's not a huge franchise with a lot of continuity threads. Let's talk quickly here about some highs and lows, as always. Let's talk about what some people thought of the movie. We'll start with the highs because I think that's where we're landing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to read this one, but I do like the person who calls it Twin Peaks versus Hostel versus Terminator 2.
What the fuck? You're just saying a bunch of things.
And Garfield.
Did you see the lasagna in the film?
Come on.
It was clearly a reference to Jim Davis's magnum opus.
I guess it has to be Jim Davis. What other work has Jim Davis done?
I have no idea.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about. Where? Hold on here. Okay. All right. This comes to us from Sota Killer. Sota Killer.
Okay.
Who described the title of the review is "This is a bone-crushing and awesome movie. It is a great movie, and it does what it's supposed to. It hurts. It's dirty. It's psychotic. We're supposed to feel the movie in a certain way, not make our own out of it. I found some of the scenes annoying, but I understood it, and I felt it. The metallic, dirty, cold, and the disgusting perversion of having your mind toyed with is something that stains the entire movie, and I love it. The intro of the movie was something, was some of the most difficult I've ever watched, and I didn't really think that I would be able to finish, but I did. So I had to make my first review ever here on IMDb.
God damn.
The fighting was extremely good. I could almost feel the pain, throwing you into walls and breaking stuff with your spine. It's not supposed to be a Jet Li spectacular ninjutsu fighting flick. It's military snapping bones and crushing lungs with a taste of boring joint snapping. For me, this was 10 out of 10. I felt this movie down to the bone. 10 out of 10 stars, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, really was just like, I love the idea about like, the violence, but also I love this idea too. Like, this is clearly maybe not the kind of thing he normally watches. The idea that this movie has some kind of mind bendy stuff is like, whoa, dude, movies can do what in the what?
But the narrative, it doesn't mix. It's not a straight line. I don't understand.
Yeah, I heard somebody talking about this with Chris Nolan once. That they talk about he makes smart movies for dumb people, which is, but it is kind of true, and that's not an insult to Chris Nolan, but like he's really good at like having incredibly complex like sci-fi trappings, but always clearly defined enough and within major action set piece based movies.
Absolutely.
And so it's this whole idea about
fits very neatly in like Christopher Nolan films. Yeah.
And that's what I love about them. I'm a huge Nolan fan. I'm not, but the whole idea about like you're talking about your high school quarterback thought Inception was the most incredible. Dude, it was dreams on dreams. It's just like your introduction to movies like that. You know, David Lynch would wreck these people's brains, but Christopher Nolan, it's enough of a normal summer blockbuster that people just go like, whoa. What?
Yeah, in between the like cool action, which as always is filmed immaculately.
Oh yeah,
but like it is that is a very funny description. I agree with you. I am also a fan of Christopher Nolan, but that is perfect.
It is. He's very good at doing high-minded stuff for a mainstream audience.
Yes.
But by the way, look up the clip of him talking about the Fast and the Furious franchise. Because one of my favorite things, he's just like...
Because he's like a fan, right?
Big fan.
He's like a huge fan. Yeah.
I love those movies. Like, I just love that there's no pretension on that guy. He's just like, I love action.
Yeah.
Just like, Tenet? I was just trying to make a James Bond movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, great. Okay. Well, here's somebody who's... oh, boy. I mean, there's a lot of these, right? As you might imagine.
Prepare ourselves.
Yeah, I know, right? So let's just go with this though, because this is the exact opposite of what we just said. This comes to us from Dan Cardoso 22.
Okay.
Who titles their review, "Let me just say that this is in fact the worst Universal Soldier movie ever." That's sad face.
That's an insane statement to make.
Yeah.
Like, this franchise has been so terrible on so many... Sorry. Okay. Go on. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I like some movies of Dolph Lundgren. By the way, I love that. That's the best beginning because that's true. I feel like that's our opinion too. Is like, I love JCVD. Dolph has been in some good movies.
So far, on board.
Yeah. But this one is blah. Practically no history, and the clone of some wannabe trying to make a continued on the history. Doesn't feel like it. Lack of passion, feeling too much blood and lights. This is not well written. As I'm reading this, I realize. Mm-hmm. Come on, the others, when they try to control them, they weren't anything like what you were thinking. Epileptic shock. We got the shock part right, at least, and the scene of the car accident is too much for a scene. The fighting scenes were practically like Van Damme fighting. All those moves, and what about the history? Very disappointed for a sequel. Negative points. 1 out of 10 stars. But just the concept, like, what about the history?
John, I almost feel like if I made fun of this person, it feels like I'm bullying. You know what I mean? Like,
what about the history?
Based on the sentences that were loosely strung together there.
Yeah, I will say, hey, maybe give a proofread on those. You know. Yeah. It's
boy. Okay. A lot to dig into there, right?
Yeah. You know? What about the history, Listman?
What about the history?
What about the history? No,
what about it? What history?
I know. I think that's the thing that gets me is like, and look, I'm somebody who there are franchises I love who I'm like, why did they make this turn or whatever? And
Yeah.
however, this franchise has already been so untrue and inconsistent in its own
Right.
continuity that, like, what is why I really I don't get how you can be like such a fan of this franchise. I get being a
Yeah.
Van Damme fan, of course, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what is there to latch onto here?
I don't know. I
It's
don't know.
it's
I think maybe it just came out at the right time for some people. You know what I mean?
well,
Like,
I even get being nostalgic for the first movie, honestly.
right. Exactly.
But the
Yes.
idea of being like, what about the history of this franchise? Well, what are you
It does
talking?
scream to me like this person hasn't actually seen all of the films. You know
I,
what I
I,
mean?
I assure you that because I don't think anyone saw those Battaglia movies. Like,
Right.
I only
Exactly.
recently
Exactly.
became
Right.
aware of those. Those are just non-existent,
Yes. Yeah.
So
Because
it's like, and I guess
if this person wasn't aware that those movies existed, I could see. I mean, I
yeah.
still think this is the best of all of them,
Oh
but
yeah.
like, but those Battaglia ones are so bad
Yeah.
that like I can't, like, calling this the worst of the franchise is it make nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. I
No,
don't understand.
it's really, like I said. I think it really is just like, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah. Uh,
And
he
like I
wanted the
said,
history.
what about the
Maybe
history, man?
he should watch Time Cop. I think he
What
just wants time.
about what about the yeah? Well, that's because Van Damme's got to protect history
Yeah, exactly.
from Ron
But
Silver.
I just love the idea of like Van Damme secretly being like George Washington, like he just went back in time, like fix history, but then ended up being George Washington or something.
Right.
Yeah. He was Julius Caesar, and there's all these great historical figures.
That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah. They were all Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
At the end, he's like Kang the Conqueror in
yeah.
Marvel Comics, where it's just like,
Yes.
throughout time, he is eternal in this way.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, that's your that's the
That's
last of
that.
the. Yeah. I mean, what to say about this franchise to sum it up?
I mean, there's not much. I mean, I'm glad they finally did the thing we were, I mean, a lot is still left up to mystery, like because not a lot of explanations in this film. So, but like, yeah, it is.
No,
They really
yeah.
haven't explored a lot of the sci-fi
No, it's
concepts.
like
This thematically does,
yeah. I think
but it like,
I do
but as far as
think.
world building goes, there's not a lot of that.
I mean, I
in
do
here.
think if you're gonna try to piece together some franchise here,
Yeah.
like the first one and then the two that John Hyams directed,
Yes,
that's as close to a Universal Soldier franchise as you're gonna get.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
think
Just
that
ignore everything else.
there is a beginning, middle, and end to that. I feel like if you were to watch
Yeah.
those three movies,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The Return, what it's interesting. I think with much less resources, Hyams was able to pull off what The Return was trying to do.
Yes, yeah.
I do want to check just because we don't have box office for this, but just out of curiosity, what was out at the time?
Right. Yeah. Let's get our heads back into 2012 times.
I mean,
yeah.
I could have told you without even looking what the number one movie of that year was: The Avengers.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
I think which we were at the midnight screening of.
We certainly were. Yeah.
And then speaking of Mr. Nolan, number 2 is The Dark Knight Rises.
There you go.
And I think that's
yeah.
I think that's an interesting snapshot of where this movie's coming out, right? It's like we're firmly in the rise of superhero franchise.
Yeah, very comic booky style.
Well, let's look at the top. Here's the top 5. Avengers, Dark Knight Rises, The Hunger Games.
Okay, yeah.
Skyfall.
Oh, nice.
And then Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Oh, the best of all of
those. But look at all of that as either superhero or longtime franchise, still kind of comic booky James Bond. I mean, James Bond is still in that, world. Or it's the young adult series.
Right, yeah, which is, become at that point is already like a huge, revenues.
Yeah, I mean, because that's
course, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Twilight ending and Hunger Games beginning, right? So it's like,
right,
boom,
exactly.
we lost this one, but we've got a whole other one going right now.
Yes.
So it's really interesting to.
I think they should have Breaking Dawn into 3 films, because there already wasn't enough for 2 films, so why not just milk it for all it's worth?
Hey,
You know
that would have been, we call that the Peter Jackson approach.
Yeah. We sure do.
Yeah. Oh boy. I think I can make this 3 movies. I mean, just because you could.
I mean, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I love is everything he's made after that. Wait, he hasn't made anything after that.
Right.
I think that broke him.
Beatles documentary. That's
yeah,
pretty
he's
good.
still sifting through more Beatles footage, I think. Is all he does now.
I don't think he'll ever stop.
No, he's just. No, I think that broke him in a weird way.
Yeah.
Well, Lisman, that wraps up our whole investigation of the Universal Soldier franchise.
Yeah.
Which
Case
means
closed. Oh wait, no, shoot. That's what you actually say at the end of the.
Yeah.
Oh.
But this will lead us into, then I think we may have mentioned at some point what we're doing next season, which is oh boy, a much more it's our first investigation that's so epic. I'm gonna have to bring in multiple investigators, including you're one of them, Lisman. We have to bring in our sort of team. It's a team-based investigation of and I want to stress this specifically because live action video game adaptations.
Yes,
that is key. We're not doing any of the animated stuff because we would get bogged down in all the Resident Evils and Mortal Kombats, and there's a ton of that stuff. So we're just doing the live action. That's still a lot of movies, though.
That's a lot. There's a lot of movies.
Yeah. And listen, you'll still get to talk about JCVD over there because, of course, we already have you down to do the JCVD Street Fighter movie.
Yes.
The classic.
Is, as far as I know, I haven't seen it, which is.
I think that's really interesting that you never saw it.
Yeah. Well, for what I know, it's very accurate to the canon of the video game franchise.
Yeah, I mean, when you think Guile, you think Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not Johnny Cage, who's actually based on him.
Right. Exactly.
I know, which is very funny, right? That he's in the other franchise as a character, as the most American man.
Mortal Kombat, yeah.
Yeah, Guile, whose whole thing is that he's super American. Anyway.
Just like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, just like Jean-Claude Van Damme. But that's not where we're starting. It's an interesting thing. People are surprised that this is the answer, but really, in my research, the first time this was done was 1993 Super Mario Bros.
Was it really?
That's the first major live-action theatrical adaptation of a video game.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, video games before Mario were quite the cultural phenomenon.
Because there are things where people go like, I've heard people go like, what about Tron? I'm like, Tron was a movie first.
Yes.
There were movies about, or something like The Wizard. There were movies about like, hey, video games. But the idea of actually adapting a video game narrative into a movie narrative starts with Super Mario Bros. In 1993.
So we're not going to be counting like Scott Pilgrim, which feels like a video game.
No,
movie.
In fact, that's actually, I thought about, that might be a whole separate season of movies like Tron or Scott Pilgrim or the Rock Jumanji movies or Ready Player One, things that are movies inspired by video games.
Honestly, Edge of Tomorrow.
Yep. If you've seen the awesome Frank Grillo movie Boss Level, which is that kind of stuff that are that might be a whole separate season. But no, we are just doing movies that directly are adapting, and whatever it's adapting has to be a video game first. So it is coming directly from a video game. We're also, at least just for time's sake, eschewing the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil movies.
Oh, thank God.
Because that
could be its own investigation.
I think that will eventually be its own investigation, because that's another one. It's like leaving Zorro and Tarzan out of the pulp heroes, because it just that way would totally deviate us.
It'd be if we did that, half of them would be those films.
Yeah, it would be a long stretch of of those. I think there's 6 or 7 of those. So
something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. We will be doing. Don't worry though, folks. There'll still be plenty of Paul W.S. Anderson on the show.
I mean, I'm assuming Monster Hunter.
Monster Hunter will be on there. Yeah. He did the first Resident Evil, or not Resident Evil. I said that he did do that. The first Mortal Kombat. He did.
Oh, that was him. Yeah,
that was him. Yeah. So we'll still talk about him. We'll still talk about him and Mila Jovovich. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But yes. But I'll have. There'll be a recurring team of people for these. But kicking off, I like that. I don't know if he's offended by this, but he keeps saying everyone's telling him it's like, well, you got to get Mike Gargoni for Super Mario Bros. Right?
Yeah.
And that's who's doing it. But I just like he seems to be baffled by everybody's like, well, obviously Mike is doing Super Mario Bros.
I mean, I would have gladly done it if Mike didn't want to. You know,
it's a movie. I think
fondness. I have a lot of nostalgia because I remember seeing it as a kid.
Yep.
Because it was Mario.
Oh, it was huge.
Being very confused about it, but still like, but it's Mario, so I like it. Yeah. You know,
that was very much my reaction too. I was like,
yeah.
I feel like we were at our age. It was like, well, we have to see it. It's Mario. Right. I don't
exactly.
There was no way we weren't going to see it. Sort of that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So that'll be fun. We'll be talking about a lot of stuff, and that's going to be a good long investigation. So that'll take us through a good chunk of the next couple months. But Listman, thank you as always for joining us and for joining us for this entire investigation.
Yeah, this episode in particular was a joy. I can't say that about some of the previous.
No, it's really nice to be able to watch these movies and be like, "Hey, and just like, that was good.
That was interesting.
Yeah,
there's something there.
Yeah. Filmmaking.
Yeah.
I
love feeling inspired to make art by watching art. You know, that's nice. That's a nice feeling.
It's nice when you can tell that the people making it like had an idea and have some passion.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
they just need to care.
We're gonna be off for we'll be off for a couple of weeks in the interim while we're setting up the video game season. So we'll probably take about 2 weeks off. But in a couple of weeks we'll be back with the Super Mario Bros. Episode to kick off the video game season. But until then, the case file is closed.